Hello, welcome back again to Warrior Wellness Center. We had started a series of talking about healing the soul. We started by introducing a book written by me, Healing the Soul from Broken to Whole, and then we defined the soul and also defined a soul wound. Um, Today we are going to look at one soul wound called rejection. We are going to name this series Rejection, the wood that named you wrong. Every one of us has a memory, and a memory enables us to remember things. If your mind doesn't have the capacity to remember past experiences, whether the way past or the recent past, then you are said to be ill. And we have had people in our lives that have diseases like dementia, where they don't remember things, and we see how the quality of life they live. But then again, the memory has no capacity to select the memories to remember and what not to remember. So it means it remembers the good and the bad. In this series, we're going to be talking about rejection um, as a childhood wound. The rejection that happened when your mind was so young that it has had no ability to process your nervous system, where normally our memories are stored. It had no ability to process, so it is stored that memory. So let's remember some of these things. Maybe it is the word that your caregiver or your parent spoke. Maybe you're told to be careless, or you're seen to be foolish. Maybe it is the word that they didn't say, that somebody harassed you, maybe a neighbor, maybe a relative, and your caregiver, the person who was supposed to affirm you, your dad, didn't see anything. Maybe it's the chair, that chair that you are almost about to be hit by your caregiver, by an adult, by your uncle, and that chair saved you. What do you remember? What does your mind tell you? I'll start by giving an example of my own uh, bit of childhood. I was born very heavy. I was an obese, beautiful girl, yeah, because I'm able to look at the photos. But that apparently triggered some people, and I was called names. I was called the big one. I was called the one who ate the most. And even though it wasn't my parents that were actually using those names, there were people very close to me. They were relatives, and we lived with them in the same compound. But my dad didn't say anything. He didn't stop them, so it continued, and that hurt maybe more than I knew then. Because when I grew up, I have had problems with even just feeding well, because I don't want to add weight, because the small guy in me reads that as a bad thing. So that was rejection. So what in your story, what in your life does rejection feel like? So let's define rejection. That it is the part of your soul that got a name that your soul wasn't supposed to carry, a name that God did not give you. So when we talk about childhood experiences, we are categorically talking about adverse childhood experiences. Adverse to mean childhood experiences that affect your life negatively. Many studies have been done about adverse childhood experiences, and they have been seen to affect who we become. We have been seen to go back to situations that we experienced as a child. For example, I will meet somebody and somebody will tell me, "You've gained weight." And that in itself would go back to the pain I felt as a child, until all up to the time I realized that was a wounding, and I had to heal my wound so that now I'm able to hear what people are saying, not necessarily decoding it as pain. And these are the things we call triggers. So we have already seen that a child nervous system does not have capacity to process things. These things would be like neglect, instability, a situation where your parents were not in good terms a lot of times, so they fought, you experienced that pain, you had maybe to move houses, maybe neglect, or not necessarily neglect from like your parents intentionally neglected you, but the feeling that you got from the lack of it, that the child in you learned that as neglect. So let's look at another example where a parent withholds affection from their children. So the child, what does the child feel? The parent has withheld affection for whatever reason. What does a young child feel? This young child will feel overlooked, will feel criticized, and he feels like she's too much or not enough. Now, a child nervous system files that as a hard moment, as a painful moment. And she sees or he sees that as what the world does to me, what the world sees me as. So that eventually stops becoming an event and it becomes a wound. A wound in the sense that it becomes the lens of how this child will see and interpret life. So we walk into adulthood with this wounded child. So we now have to respond to situations or react to situations. For example, you are always ready to defend yourself. When somebody starts speaking and your mind reads that as an attack, you are ready to defend yourself, even without listening in. Or you go into a room and you are scanning the room. Before you sit and relax, you have scanned the whole room. You are seeking for comfort because earlier you probably felt like your space was full of conflict. You apologize for taking up space that you are meant to have in the first place. So you're constantly saying, I'm sorry, even when it's not a requirement, so that you feel like you are fitting in. Or let's say you become very mistrustful. So everybody who talks to you, you don't trust them. Everybody who says hello to you, you don't trust them. Everybody who tries to be kind to you, you don't trust them. Therefore, this will affect how we form relationships. So we read into people's statements. We look to find what they are saying and what is behind their voice. We impose it on ourselves because this is what our childhood mind feels familiar with. This is not who you are. This is not your personality trait. This is a nervous system that learned its lesson too early and is manifesting it into adulthood. Thank you so much for listening in. God bless you.